Hello everyone. This is Siddharth from QA Infotech, anchoring today's webinar and supporting the event logistically. On behalf of QA Infotech, I would like to thank and welcome you all to this web event on data analytics using XAPI. The agenda for today's webinar is to discuss briefly about XAPI, our experiences with TinCan, XAPI, and LRS through a short demo using along with our perspective on different LRSs we have experimented with. Please join Mukul, our President of Data Sciences and Analytics at QA Infotech, as he discusses these along with a demo and case study that is representative of these various points touched upon. Please feel free to send your questions to us anytime during the web event using the Questions tab on GoToWebinar platform. At the end of the session, we will try to answer all the questions received during this web event. All participants are on mute at this time to allow for the speakers to present. Over to Mukul now.
Thanks, Siddharth. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this webinar. I am Mukul, and I head the Data Science Analytics Group at QA Infotech, Noida, India. I have a team of data scientists and engineers who have been working in the e-learning domain, and we have created some excellent dashboards representing the data which we have captured through the e-learning applications. So while we go through this webinar, I will be taking you through an example of a e-learning client, a big client, what was the problem statement, how we approached that problem through different dashboards, and then I will present a demo which will show how a particular learning application can be instrumented with XAPI. Data can be collected and stored in LRS, and then retrieved to create dashboards based on data analytics. And then we will also talk about our experiences with some of the LRSs, and we will take questions in the end. So as I mentioned, the team worked on the problem statement for a e-learning company, and the things which we had to work on was, given any quiz or assessment, can the system automatically categorize whether the quiz was simple, medium, or complex? Another one was can we simply represent how the students progress from semester to semester in a given school at any point of time? We also wanted to come to a conclusion on instructor success or the teacher success, and that should be derived through student performance. Then a particular report was required around what reading material is being accessed most, what is not being used that much, and so on and so forth. There was also an explicit requirement that we have to collect the data, which is essentially the learning data happening outside the LMS, which is being used in the school. So given these, and these are not all, I just picked up a few of them. So given these requirements or problem statements, what kind of dashboards we ultimately created, I'm showing a glimpse of those now. So this was one of the reports which is around one particular course, and it shows the quiz complexity of different quizzes and homework assignments based on the average scores which students have received in each of these assignments. Right? So we can see it is easy, medium, and complex based on the average scores. Another one is, this is simple, as I was talking, from semester to semester, what is the student progress? and it is based on the average grades which the student is receiving in each of these semesters. There is a dotted line which also shows the class average. It's a very simple report. Then if we want to look at instructor success, this is showing a multi-dimensional graph where on the left-hand side, it is showing total number of students, how many of them have completed their assignments in calculus, and on the right-hand side, their average scores which they have received. And each of these data points are for different teachers like Natalia, Tony, Frank, and Tony Zha. And yet again, we can see there is a yellow line, which is the national average for this particular subject. So this gives a good idea about how each instructor is doing. Here we are talking of students and how many pages they have seen in a given course. So if there is a tutorial or a course material to be read, then each of these students are reading so many pages. That is what is being depicted here. And this is actually the page statistics. So given each page in the course, what are the total number of views which are there, which this actually depicts the popularity of any given page. If a page is not being seen too many times, maybe it is complex, maybe it is not finding any favorites. So those kind of results can be generated through this graph. So we can see most of these are very, very simple reports, and using XAPI we have been able to generate the data which was required to come up with these reports. Now let's talk about where the learning in any typical system today, learning system today, where the learning is happening. Is it all confined within the LMS? LMS is essentially our learning management systems which most of the companies provide who are in the e-learning domain. The answer is it is happening inside LMS, but it is also outside the LMS. So if we see in this picture, the learner is at the center, but then there are multiple tools and multiple ways to learn. And it could be, learning could be happening on mobile, it could be happening in the classroom, it could be happening on the computers. There are various places and at different times when the learning is happening. So the idea should be that we should be able to collect all that data, all those experiences. We should be able to share that data, and ultimately these experiences should be trackable. And that's where XAPI comes into being. So XAPI is, so let's talk about what is XAPI. So XAPI is relatively a new specification for learning technology. It is also called Tin Can in its first avatar. That's what it was famous by, and now it is mostly XAPI. It is also considered a next generation of SCORM. And as for ADL, who actually started both SCORM and XAPI, XAPI or Experience API is a service that allows for statements of experiences to be recorded and stored in a database of sorts, which is called Learning Record Store. What are these statements which are going into LRS? These statements in a very simple form are actually noun, verb, and object. I did this is a statement which can be recorded into the LRS. And we'll see more examples later on. When it comes to XAPI, we can actually have a system without LMS. It's not necessary to have an LMS. Learning outside the browser is accommodated using XAPI. So all the mobile learning, native mobile apps are allowed. We can track games, simulations, and all sorts of informal learning. And we can also track offline learning, which is very important. So if we look at XAPI and the LRS ecosystem, and as I just mentioned, LRS is the place where all the experience activities are recorded in the form of XAPI statements. So if we look at this picture, on the right hand side we have all the activity providers like LMS, different e-learning courses, whatever training or teaching is happening in the classrooms, games, simulations, etc., mobile apps. And then on the left hand side we can see what does LRS provide. Using LRS we can see reports in different dashboards, we can do learning analytics, and we can also do badges, which is essentially people earn based on what all learning they have acquired. And at this point I'd like to say that LRS can sit inside the LMS, which could be existing LMS, or it could be sitting outside the LRS. And then because of the XAPI standards, LRS to LRS communication is also allowed. So if we look at LRS in little more details, what does LRS support or help with? So as I mentioned, LRS can record all learning experiences which are not just happening inside desktop browsers. So that means it can also support variety of content types, and everything which is happening in the self-paced learning is recorded. There is support for offline and disconnected scenarios. We have the ability, if we have the LRS, then you will have the ability to track learning that is taking place across multiple platforms and devices. And we can have improved runtime data and analytics. It also supports team-based scenarios, which is a kind of novelty for data analytics in e-learning environment. So with that, I come to my demo, and in this demo we will have a course which is representative of a tutorial as well as an assessment, which is a quiz, and there will be activities which will be recorded into the LRS, and then we will be generating the reports. And some of the reports are going to be same as what I just mentioned in the beginning of my presentation. So before I go into the demo, I just go through this quick workflow. So we used Moodle, which is an open source learning management system. We loaded the Tin Can plugin, which comes with the Moodle, and we created our course. We have a bunch of students registered there. So if a student launches a course, the activities which the student performs to the course is pushed into LRS in the form of XAPI statements, which is the statements are generally in the form of JSONs. JSON is JavaScript object notation, as most of people would know. And as you see, it is in the form of actor, verb, and object. So Sally Glider Experience Software Testing course, and that's what is being pushed. And in the LRS, using REST APIs, we can then write as well as read out of it. And in our case, we had a PHP implementation to read the XAPI statements, perform data analytics, and then display the reports on the web dashboard. So at this point, I'll switch into my browser. And this is my Moodle screen where I will log into the student. We can assume Mike Smith is one of the students. is logging in into the course which is supported on Moodle, and here he is offered software testing course. And when Mike goes into the course, he is shown two options. One is software testing tutorial, and another one is software testing assessment, which is a quiz. So we can try and start the tutorial, which is essentially a lesson on software testing. So here we are seeing the first page, which says software testing and introduction, and Mike goes through it, takes clicks on the next button to go into the next page, which is around software testing lifecycle, and read through it. At this point, let's try to see what is there in the LRS. So for this demo, I am using a free version of Diff LRS, which is essentially a commercial LRS. So I have already logged into this LRS, and we can see that we have different activities being shown as what is most popular and what is least popular, followed by the timeline where we are in August, and it shows different number of statements which are being sent to the system, which is LRS. A verb cloud, which is, so as I spoke in the beginning, XAPI statement has a noun, verb, and an object. So which verb is being used most of the time? What is more popular is shown here as experienced. And then we can see the activity screen here, activity stream, and if I have to see the latest stream, I will just update. So it should show Mike Smith has logged in and has tried to enter the lesson on software testing. So right here, you can see Mike Smith launched the course, attempted software testing tutorial, and then experienced the software testing introduction page, and also experienced the STLC page, right? At this point, we can go back to our tutorial and try and attempt the assessment, which is the quiz. So what is happening in this particular demo? Every time the student clicks on any particular page, read through certain content, it is sent as a statement into the LRS. And that happens even during the quiz, which we are going to attempt now. When I try the quiz, there are probably few questions which are shown. All that data is sent to the LRS. That 5 questions are displayed. Each question is then attempted, and the answer is recorded, and that also is sent to the LRS, whether it is correct or incorrect. And that's how we actually grade the whole quiz. And that is how the LRS actually knows for each student what kind of grades have been received for a given assessment. And that is used later on to create the dashboards. So if we go into the assessment, it's a very simple 5 questions assessment based on the course which the student, Mike in our case, has attempted. And we can see it is assessment with these multiple choice questions. Testing done without planning and documentation is called. And then beta testing is done at users. And I'll just click some, leave some, and that finishes the quiz. Mike has submitted it. He has got the scores. We do a save and exit. And at this point, we can go back to LRS LRS and again watch the activities which have gone into the LRS in the form of statements. So right here, we are seeing that he has attempted software testing assessment and the questions which have been answered, and then finally the software testing assessment has been terminated. So now I will show you the dashboard which we have created based on reading all this data out of the LRS. The first one is the page statistics. So if we remember in the tutorial, there were few pages like software testing, planning phase, requirement phase, and here we are seeing different page views for this particular course. If we see the next dashboard, it is about students. So we can see Mike Smith, how many pages Mike has visited and read. Same for John Doe and other students. We also have plotted a graph around questions which were shown in the assessment or the quiz, and for each of these questions we are seeing average number of attempts which were required to answer these questions correctly. So in a way, this also points to the complexity of the questions, or how difficult or how simple these questions are. So that is my demo. We'll go back to the slides. And besides this, in the previous slide, I had shown a very simple JSON which is going into the LRS. If you look at this one, this is giving you, it looks very busy, but it is, I only wanted to show a typical JSON where software testing, if you see a verb is attempted and object is software testing assessment, and the user or student is David Jones. So David Jones is actually attempting software testing assessment, and it is coming out of the demo only. And then what is the context? That is all recorded here. These are all the extra information related to this particular activity. It can have parent information, category, grouping. And then in the end is the authority, which is actually the LRS information with which we have logged in. So this gives a little more meat to our JSON, which we saw in our previous slide. So with that, I will now talk about a competing standard. So we have understood what is XAPI. We have actually shown how to use it and do some analytics and show some dashboards. But what if we want to see what are other specifications and standards out there? Caliper Analytics is another one, and I want to just spend a few minutes talking about Caliper. So this is very similar to XAPI, but it is more focused, or it is narrowly focused on the e-learning space, while XAPI can address some other applications also. And this is fairly new as compared to XAPI. The first version which came out was late last year, and while XAPI is owned by ADL, and now there is another consortium which is taking care of it, which is DISC. In case of Caliper, it is IMS Global, which is a non-profit organization, and here the membership is required for people to access or use these standards. So that is one basic difference. And XAPI is seeing more and more adoption in corporate learning domain, while when we look at the higher education market or the universities or the schools, we are seeing Caliper gaining traction. So very simple and quickly, what is a Caliper ecosystem? Here again, we have, instead of statements, here we have events which are containing similar data like actor, action, object, and the context. All these events are going into an event store. And Caliper's analytics provides sensor APIs through different language interfaces. Each of the events are actually derived through different metric profiles, which could be annotation, assignable, assessment, reading, media, and these are really based on what type of actions the student is doing. So what are these profiles? We just talked about reading profile and media profile and annotation. So I have just tried to explain with the help of this diagram. If the student is the person, if he is reading a particular course material, in our case software testing for instance, then he will navigate to that reading material, he will view that chapter, and if suppose he is highlighting some particular any material, then we will be looking at the annotation metric profile. All that data will go as part of annotation. And if the student is actually attempting an assessment or a quiz, then we can see that the person is actually submitting the quiz and an attempt is generated, and that is happening through the gradable or assessment metric profile. And this is one of my favorites, where it clearly says what happens in XAPI and what happens in IMS Caliper. And here we can see on the right hand side we have the actor, verb, object, result, context, and timestamp. This is a typical XAPI statement. And on the left hand side we can see the Caliper, and I just picked up the assignable. And here we are seeing how these different properties are mapping to XAPI. So the first bunch is mapping into the context, maximum attempts, submits, and max score is mapping to result in XAPI. And in case if we go into the event, there is an actor, action, and object in Caliper, which directly maps to same things in XAPI statement. Same, and then we look at the result, or what is generated, that maps into the result in XAPI. And then there is an event time, which maps to timestamp, and education app, group, and membership maps into the context. With that, I come to my slide where we talk about different LRSs, and this is purely based on the experience of my team. There are, as a lot of people might know, there are a number of LRSs out there. We just experimented with these three, and I thought I'll just share that knowledge with everyone. So we took VAX LRS, Learning Locker LRS, and Open LRS. So if you look at this table, it is fairly self-explanatory. If we talk about deployment, VAX is cloud, while in Learning Locker we can have our own deployment also, as well as cloud version. In case of Open LRS, we can deploy it on our server. As far as open source goes, Learning Locker and Open LRS are open source. VAX is a commercial system. In case of multiple instances, so can I have multiple LRS instances? The answer is yes. But for the VAX LRS and Learning Locker, but in case of Open LRS, it is no. For the reports, people must have seen during my demo, there are a bunch of data points which are shown nicely in VAX LRS, but there are many reports which are there as canned reports available. And there is an easy way to download data in CSV files in VAX LRS, as well as they have a data warehouse view also available. In case of Learning Locker, we have again existing canned reports, and people can create their own reports. In case of OpenLRS, unfortunately, that is a non-UI based system. So if we have to do some reporting, it has to be like a web dashboard, which I was showing during my demo. Yeah, for XAPI, all of them are supporting XAPI, and in case of Caliper analytics, OpenLRS says that they will have future versions where Caliper will be supported. There is no support in Learning Locker LRS, and I couldn't find anything in Vex LRS which talks about Caliper yet. Connecting to different enterprise systems or third-party systems, Vex LRS does a wonderful job there. They have a way through Zapier which can connect to a number of web applications, and there is no coding required. In case of Learning Locker, there will be, you can connect to systems, but essentially you have to write connectors, and that's the way to integrate. In OpenLRS, the answer is probably yes, and the coding is required. For technology, on Vex LRS, I know it is Postgres based, but in case of Learning Locker, it is mostly PHP, MongoDB, and Backbone.js. But we know that Learning Locker is now being moved on to Node.js, and there is a big code rewrite going on. For OpenLRS, it is essentially Java based, and they are using Redis as well as Elasticsearch and MongoDB for storing the statements in the LRS. On the pricing front, Vex LRS has a free version as well as paid versions where you can go up to 5 million statements and even probably more per month. In case of Learning Locker LRS, it is free, but there is also a cloud version which you have to pay for. It is $199 a month, and OpenLRS is essentially free. And I took a lot of references from the implementation guide in Caliper, and also for LRS and XAPI, I have used a number of web resources. So in the end, let me just sum up with what all we can take away from this presentation. So first is, for applications that need to record any experience or all experiences, XAPI is a great option. And you don't have to write or create your own LRS. People can do that, but already there is a lot available out there in the market in terms of commercial as well as open source. And if you are willing to go down this path, then most of the implementation will happen in your learning application or the e-learning app, which you already probably have. And once the data is pushed into LRS, then we can have our own web application or standalone application where it can be analyzed and reported through different dashboards. And finally, at my end, we have a team which is significantly experienced now in XAPI, Caliper, LRS, Event Store, and related technologies. So with that, Siddharth, I pass the baton back to you.
Thank you, Mukul. I believe this was very informative and must have generated some interest in our audience. We'll now start with the Q&A phase to answer the questions received from our audience. So we'll start with the first one. So what does it take to implement XAPI or LRS in my existing e-learning or LMS solution?
All right, so I think my webinar touched upon that through the demo itself. So in case you have an existing e-learning app or a LMS, what we need to do is just instrument it to send the data to LRS. Whenever there is any interaction, that should be recorded. And later the data can be read from the LRS, and we can do data analytics and show the reports. And if we go a little bit into double click this, if we are going to, in case we are having a quiz or an assessment or a tutorial, suppose we have a quiz and we want to collect all the data around quiz and put it in LRS, essentially we have to go into that part of the code in the learning app where we are collecting information about the quiz. What are the questions, what were attempted, what is correct, what is incorrect, the grades, maximum possible grades, and the grades achieved, and all that information should be sent to the LRS through the XAPI statements, and then that same data can be read out and shown in the dashboards.
Thank you. Here's the second one. So I have my solution that handles SCORM. How can I make it XAPI compliant?
Yeah, so I think already this is a solved problem of sorts. The simplest way is to use, for instance, we can have a SCORM engine. Using that engine, the SCORM content can be converted into tin can statements, and those will finally be stored into the LRS. So this way, if you already have a SCORM-enabled product or set of products, you don't have to really rewrite your solution to support XAPI. So this is most, the easiest way.
Okay, here's the last one. So where else can I use XAPI or LMS other than eLearning?
Okay, so in case, and we should go back again, when I mentioned that Caliper is more focused towards eLearning, while XAPI can go into broader domain. So this one actually will answer that also. So besides eLearning, XAPI can be used in many learning and development situations, especially in the HR departments of different corporations. So we can have competency monitoring as well as continuous evaluation using XAPI. So if we look at any organization where there is a need for continuous learning, and obviously if we look at different organizations, there are different courses at various points which are being administered to the employees. Using XAPI, we can measure the effectiveness of the course and how the performance of the employees is changing over time. So that's something we can do using XAPI. And then another example could be something like just-in-time support or just-in-time knowledge sharing. So for instance, if a doctor is looking at a patient or trying to diagnose a patient, and if the diagnosis is, for example, diabetes, immediately on doctor's mobile or on doctor's terminal, new research around diabetes will start showing up as soon as a patient has been diagnosed with diabetes. And that all can also be implemented through a XAPI-enabled system. So these are some of the examples, but largely XAPI is being used in a learning context.
We just received one more. So what is the difference between Caliper and XAPI?
Okay, besides what I mentioned, really, I will try to address this with few more points. So one is, if we look at Caliper, the definitions in Caliper are quite tight. So when we look at metric profiles, as opposed to what is there in XAPI, the Caliper defines everything quite crisply, while in XAPI there is flexibility to define your own profiles and verbs, and hence there is a difference in the way Caliper approaches various definitions vis-a-vis XAPI. Another difference could be Caliper actually supports events which can record social interactions. Like if we remember, there was an annotation metric profile. That can record things like what a student has shared, what they have liked, what a person has ranked, what is recommended, what is disliked. So all that helps in doing a lot of social analytics, and this is actually built in Caliper. And in terms of governance, as I mentioned in the beginning, let me repeat a little bit more explicitly. Caliper is governed by subscribing members or a consortium, while XAPI is more in the open standards realm, right? And XAPI is owned by now an DISC, which is Data Interoperability Standards Consortium, which was established this year itself, and it's a non-profit organization in Pennsylvania, US. So those are some of the differences.
We just received one more question, so I'll just give it to you, Mukul. So if I convert my SCORM package to tin can compliant, will it also support my existing LMS?
Yeah, so what we have to do is essentially instrument it in a way that it continues to work for your existing SCORM content and whatever it is doing. Additionally, all the SCORM content would be turned into XAPI statements, and those will be sent to the LRS, which could be sitting in your existing LMS, or it can sit outside your LMS. So both these things can work at the same time.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Mukul. So with this, I believe we are almost out of time, so I'll just close the session by thanking everybody. So thank you very much for joining us in this web event and spending your valuable time with us. We hope you found it useful and informative. I would also like to thank Mukul for sharing his thoughts and insights with us. Please note that if there are still any questions that you would like to discuss, feel free to write back to us and we'll get back to you at the earliest. You will be receiving a short survey about today's web event, and we would really appreciate if you could please take a few minutes to provide your valuable feedback. You may log off at this time. Have a nice day.